Do you want a financially secure future, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones as well? This is Generations of Wealth, the podcast that breaks down the most effective wealth building strategies you can easily apply to your own life. Join investor and international best-selling author Derek Dombeck in exploring practical tips and sound advice on building a profitable business, creating a powerful brand, or getting into the thriving world of real estate investing. This is your chance to create your very own financial roadmap to live your vision, love your life. Let's begin this discussion with your host, Derek Dombeck.
Welcome to the Generations of Wealth podcast. I'm Derek Dombeck, your host, and this is the show where we talk about how you can live your vision and love your life. And today, I've got a good buddy of mine. His name is Brandon McDonald, not to be confused with old McDonald, although he's getting there.
I feel like I'm there for sure.
We were just jamming before we started recording. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and who you are, and this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Brandon McDonald with the Nashville Money Guys out of Nashville, Tennessee. Derek and I probably met 10 years ago on the Generations of Wealth cruise. And so we've kind of known each other for a while, existed in the same education ecosystems. And so basically started real estate investing in 2006, flipping houses. And then I partnered up with two guys in 2009. We bought a bunch of rentals through the downturn in Nashville, Tennessee. Started flipping with those two guys, buying rentals. In 2012, we shifted over to doing some kind of new construction, which kind of became our primary focus as far as like buy something, build it, sell it, use that money to eat. And then it was converting some of those to Airbnbs. So we've got a decent sized Airbnb portfolio, still have rental property. And now we've kind of shifted into hard money lending and larger development stuff in the last few years. That's kind of the quickie.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I guess we'll just kind of start at the beginning. Of you and your two business partners, which one is the most intelligent?
I think that's a very obvious thing for me to state that it is not me.
I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding.
No, I know you are. This is the interesting thing because we have this dynamic with three partners total, and we've been partners for 15 years. We've found different types of intelligence in different circumstances. So like I have a lot more emotional fortitude than like Brandon Rumbley does. I'm much more confrontational. So that really has served us in certain circumstances. But Brandon Rumbley is definitely better at chess and has a higher IQ than me.
Yeah, but who's a better poker player? No, we can't go down that road. We can't go down that road.
Well, I don't want you to embarrass yourself with all the stories of you losing thousands of dollars over time, Derek. So yeah, we probably ought to shy away from that.
I will say I do get beat quite often by you and Brandon and Jason, who we commonly refer to as BB and J. But every once in a while, I do win a hand, and every once in a while, I do maybe rub it in a little too much. However,
yeah,
it's fun.
When you win, you're a very sore winner, and it's funny. Yeah, it's funny.
Well, it doesn't happen often. I have to be.
That's right.
So, well, I mean, we've known each other a long time. You really know what the Generations of Wealth is all about, more than a lot of people that are just starting to explore and learn about our show. Talk about your journey a little bit, because you've had an interesting dynamic. Having these business partners, 15 years is a long time to have a partnership. But the evolution, you told it in the quick story, but a little bit more detail. How do you go from flipping houses to now being, a very well-renowned, builder and developer in the Nashville area, and now getting into the lending space?
Yeah. So first of all, I feel like it's kind of like getting married in high school and staying together forever. Like, I think you just get super lucky because you have no idea what actually is is required at the different stages of life to exist with other people. So, honestly, I would say that it seems a little miraculous that we've been able to maintain a partnership, that we actually still enjoy each other for the last 15 years. Is it longer than 15 now? Because it was 2009. I need to start doing some updating to my math. Now it's 15. So I think that what it takes is, if we're talking about like what it takes to make a partnership successful, it takes core characteristics that are similar as far as like integrity and ethics, willing to sacrifice, and then also willing to just kind of constantly be in a state of granting the other people grace, because we're all making mistakes all the time. And we just kind of have to recognize like, okay, these are tolerable size mistakes given the circumstances. And then what we realized was another thing that was really interesting, that this is like the whole, you get married in high school and you don't know what's going to come up in the future. We also, if you have one partner that really like outspends and has a really lavish lifestyle compared to another partner, that can create a lot of really rough dynamics. So like Jason in the group, he tends to be more fiscally conservative, and he's our like CFO. So he's the guy that's kind of controlling the money. And Rumbly and I are like, hey, we've got all these ideas. What if we go do this? And Jason's like, well, let's pull it back here a little bit. But luckily on the personal side, like Jason just put in a really nice pool at his house, built a pool house over a 4-car garage. And then Rumbly's building his ridiculous house out in Mount Juliet, or in Lebanon. And, Jocelyn and I, my wife, we, bought a farm, and like we're all kind of expanding lifestyle steadily together at a really similar pace. Like, and it's crazy to think about. That is not probably something that people would think about as important, but it's super important, because if you have one person who's constantly hammering the partnership saying like, we can't reinvest in this next thing. We can't do that because I need more money coming in every month. Like, I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars we have left in the system over time to do, to do new projects, to try new things, like, shifting over to this hard money lending thing. We are converting out of existing projects and rolling it over to this. And it would be really nice to like take those distributions home. But we've all agreed we're going to sell a bunch of these houses and move that money over into the hard money lending thing. And it takes kind of a consistency of lifestyle together to pull that off.
Well, you have actually been a part of a mastermind that I host called Circle of Trust since its inception. So about 6 years now. And
yep.
The interesting thing for me was to watch you and Brandon and Jason grow as a team and design a vision for your life together, separately at first, but then together. And I guess I want to kind of have you tell the audience, what's the importance of not only figuring out a vision for what you want your life to look like, but the importance of knowing what your partner's vision is as well.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people kind of have a general direction of where they're going. Like, we're going to go that way. But it becomes a lot easier to go that way a lot faster if you're more specific. So if you can really hammer down like what you want your life to look like in 1 year, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, it becomes easier to say no to certain things, which is a bigger deal. Like, as you kind of become more established in whatever business you're doing, there will be opportunities that pop up that tend to be that would be interesting. But if you have the vision written down, you can say no, like, that's outside of the vision. We're not actually interested in doing this. And so I think that for us, I think we have varying degrees of like a true hammered out personal vision. Like, I think that Dodge's, which is Jason, I think that his is still a little more vague. And I think that he's continuing to hone it to try to get a little bit more specific. But like every week, he'll probably name something else that's like a core foundational thing that he's discovered about him and his family that he wants as a part of their life vision. So even just having it as a frame of thought that as you're walking throughout life thinking, what direction do I want to go in, and continuing to hone it to get more specific has been a big mind shift for us. And then Rumbly, I think probably something similar. I think he's a little bit more clear than Jason is. And I think I have the most amount of clarity, but it's also because I take this, I think I'm willing to live with regret easier. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm more willing to commit to a plan even if the plan isn't perfect, and just say like, we'll figure it out. Like if you ask my wife, that's a phrase that like, yeah, no, I'm an optimist. Like we'll figure it out. And it's definitely lands you in some sticky situations, but I think that that's probably the reason that I have my vision hammered down a little bit more. But once we started talking about this within the group, we started bringing this into our monthly meetings and into our weekly meetings that we have. And like one thing was really interesting. What we realized was none of us really actually, when we drilled down, I wanted the prestige of having a big company. Like I wanted the prestige of it. I wanted to say we have 50 employees. We have, we build $50 million worth of houses every year, XYZ. But when we actually started really figuring out what we actually truly wanted, like what our true heart's desires were, none of us actually wanted those things. That was just something to feed the ego. And we could have spent a lot of time building something that once you got to that location, that destination, you realize like, oh no, this wasn't actually where we wanted to go. So getting asked challenging questions in something like the mastermind, especially like Dave Peters is so good at asking really pointed questions about the vision in particular. It's created a lot of that clarity, which has helped us transition from like, we don't want to build as many houses. We don't want to flip as many houses. We're really enjoying the hard money lending thing. And it suits our personality so much more. Like it literally, as soon as we shifted over, we all felt like, here's your role, here's your role, here's your role. Here's all the tasks that you're in charge of. Here's the tasks you are, and it fits our personalities. Whereas the flipping and building business, I feel like we were always a little bit, not terribly, it's just a more complicated business. And I think that we were kind of cramming square pegs into round holes just a little bit. Like maybe we'll say like oblong, oval pegs into round holes. Whereas the lending thing, it just suits us. So if we weren't focused on vision, I don't think we would have found it.
So a lot to think about there. As far as when you said building a big company to have the prestige and to feed the ego, I'm really passionate about that, because generations of wealth is not just building financial wealth. And I say this on the show often, right? It's about time wealth, financial wealth, spiritual wealth. You guys at this point, and I know that you're an open book anyways, how many hours a week do you work on average, and have you worked on average for the last 5 years while building a very, very successful business, actually several very successful businesses? Because most people feel like they've got to just work nonstop, 6-7 days a week, 24/7, answering the phone to reach these massive goals. What's your experience been?
Yeah, so I mean, you could take the last 5 years in like and kind of encapsulate it and say that's what it took to get there. But we did work our butts off in the beginning. So like when we started, I was 25, and from 25 to 30, like there was long hours that were being, like we were building a marketing team. We were figuring all that stuff out about like figuring out a new business. But now, as of 5 years ago, we're working 20 hours a week. And that was literally the first stipulation when we started thinking about the hard money lending thing. Was it was the funniest thing. When we sat down, we said, what do we want this business to look like? And every single person on their list said, I'm not willing to give more than 20 hours a week to it. That was the first thing on the list. It had nothing to do with like how much money we wanted it to make, how many loans we wanted to do. It had to do with how much input of our time were we willing to give to the business. So 20 hours is the answer. And I will say, like, we don't run the best business, but we've run many multiple $1 million businesses doing 20 hours a week worth of work. And it's because we've delegated certain things out that are handled adequately enough. And, but it's like I said, I think that the more people I meet, the more I realize like the different talents within our team are special. And the three of us finding each other and the dynamic is a bit special, because I think that the three of us definitely add up to more than the sum of our parts, for sure. I think that hustle culture is a really interesting, like the conversation of like from Gary Vee and Alex Hormozy and a bunch of these people that you'll find online. This hustle culture thing is something that I think you can choose to shift into that gear and really put the hammer down if you have really clear goals and things that you want to accomplish and a timeline. And then you just say, I'm ignoring everything else and I'm going to get to this goal. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think if you create a business just because you weren't paying attention, and like I'd said earlier, like we want $50 million worth of revenue and we want to build a team of 50. I think what we would have just done is created a thing that forced us to be working at that pace for the duration, or it would fall apart. And it's a very easy thing to do if you don't have a clear vision of what you want your life to look like, to end up in that spot. And I think that a lot of people would look at it as with envy. You're driving the fancy car, living in the big house, but you go home at night and you're just kind of gutted. And when you're old, when you're laying on your deathbed, you're going to look back and you're going to be telling your grandkids that don't know you, like, I had 50 employees though. And they're like, that's cool. Thanks, Grandpa.
Yeah. And they're squandering their inheritance before you're even gone. But
potentially, yeah.
And these conversations don't usually happen on a lot of shows and a lot of podcasts, at least that I've listened to. It's always about work bigger, harder, put in the hours today and someday you'll have this massive nest egg and then you can enjoy life. And you and I mean, we've been buddies. We go on vacations together and hunting trips and other things. So we have conversations that most wouldn't have with each other, most likely. But it drives me absolutely crazy when I listen to some of these other people, as you mentioned, some names, and I won't really throw names out there, but they just want the general public to see their social media and to pump up their ego. But when you know them personally or you know their backstory, a good majority of the influencers that you're seeing or hearing are so full of shit. And they're phonies. And they've built this big monster, like you described, this business that is a monster, and you have to consistently keep feeding that monster. It's got so much overhead. And when you have a black swan event like COVID hits, for example, all of a sudden, you can't feed the monster. You're done. You can get wiped out in seconds. And I really respect.
But I don't have an issue though with people who, if they're intentional and that's what they really want to do. Like if you really want to do that and you have a reason for you that you want to construct that and you want to put that together, I have no problem with that at all. I just feel like there's a lot of people that want to do it because they think it's going to bring them fulfillment and happiness. And they think that that's what's required to get fulfillment and happiness. And I think for very few people is that the case.
Mm-hmm.
And there definitely are a lot of people that have built big social media brands around this, this type of thing. But it's cool if that's what you want to do. Like I would like somebody to be honest. If they say, I want to make $1 million a year and here's the reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And those reasons add up to stuff like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like if I wanted to be a world traveler and I wanted to do it in a certain way, and it required that I made $1 million a year and paid 400 grand a year in taxes to do it. Okay. Like I don't have a problem with that. But I think that understanding what a fulfilled life is and a truly, like, when you go away from this world, what did you actually leave behind? Who did you help? Who did you influence? And what type of influence, were you in their lives? What does that look like? And I think for a lot of, especially I think it's a big American thing as well. Like we've built this culture of success and this culture of comfort. And, it's kind of funny. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I go out in a canoe, and like you go out in a canoe on water, and you're like, this is awesome. And you get in the water and you swim around, and I'm pretty happy in my canoe. But I can also go out on a $400,000 speedboat. And I would say that the $400,000 speedboat is better and more enjoyable than the canoe. But is the ratio of $500 canoe versus $400,000 speedboat, like, is it worth trying to span that gap? And like, I think the answer is definitely no. I think the answer is no. But for us with building a business, there's a deep satisfaction to actually building a business that you feel like runs well, like, and you're trying to put the parts together so that everything is kind of, this gets handed off to here, this gets handed off to here. And we're also networking with people and meeting new people, making new friends, getting to go on trips that we probably wouldn't have before, like getting indoors that we wouldn't if I'm just, in the canoe. Because the truth is the $400,000 speedboat does open some doors that you wouldn't necessarily get in with the canoe. So I think it's just about being intentional. I think it's about being intentional and setting and deciding what the vision for your life is and what is important to you and your family.
And I agree. And I wasn't actually trying to downplay people that want to build that big business, much like you just said. What I don't love is the people that are fakes or phonies about it. And, if they're just putting on a facade to make people believe that they've got it all together. The reality is everybody I've met, and it doesn't matter if they make, zero money or they're making $100 million a year. We all have very, very similar challenges, and they may be larger or smaller in scale based on, your financial scenario. But we all have the same problems. We could all
Absolutely.
get cancer tomorrow. We could get hit by a bus. Anything can happen at any time. And what I really enjoy is meeting the people and building the network with, people like yourself and your business partners, knowing that we've got the right network around us to be humble, so to speak, and to be always helping, right? So I will kind of start winding this down with one of my favorite questions. What should I be asking you that I haven't asked you?
I think it just depends on what the goal is. Like, are we talking about finance? Are we talking about how to make you a better elk hunter? Like, are we talking about how to make you a better archer? Like,
we're not going down that path. But what can
I have so many fun hunting
not asked
stories.
you that can help the generations of wealth listening audience?
I think that let's see. So this just popped in my head, and I don't think this is like the end all be all. This isn't like the most amazing answer for anything. Recognize the difference between shiny object syndrome and an opportunity that could present itself and actually be a worth diverting the path from. And the way you do that is to create a clear vision that has broken down pieces inside of it that you can basically filter that new opportunity through. So we were at Masters up in Kentucky, and I was talking to Brad Simmons' son, who had just done van life, and he lived in a van for a year, and he felt like kind of a failure because he hated it. Like he was like, it just wasn't what I expected at all. I was lonely. I grew a bit of a social media following, but like I felt it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And he was really disappointed that he'd kind of taken that journey. And I said, no, I think that you discovered something about yourself that as a man in your 40s or 50s, you would always wonder about. You may regret having never gone on that adventure and learning something so deep about yourself if you hadn't then chosen to divert off that path that you were so certain was going to bring you fulfillment and happiness. I think you may have lived with regret and always looked back and may have, in your 40s or 50s had like a weird midlife van life crisis thing. So like recognize the value in failure and recognize the value in something that potentially you thought was shiny object syndrome that is actually a good path diversion based on the vision.
That is so deep, and I'm actually shocked that you came up with that. That's really great.
I didn't. No, I'm just kidding. I did. I'm a genius.
I
told you I'm
probably
the smartest guy in our group.
I probably said that to you at some point on a hunting trip when I was educating you on how to properly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're a deep well, Derek. You and I here, deep wells.
Absolutely. Brandon, how can people hear more about you, find you, talk a little bit about Nashville, hard money guys or Nashville money guys?
So actually we've been doing a podcast a little bit. We filmed some episodes. If you look Nashville Money Guys on YouTube, I'd say that's the primary place because we're doing like video podcasts, a little higher quality, good mics, that whole deal. And we're going to keep those going. If you're interested in hard money lending in the Southeast, not in Derek's region, in the Southeast, then hit us up, NashvilleMoneyGuys.com. That's NashvilleMoneyGuys.com.
All right. Well, I appreciate having you on the show. We always have a good time, no matter where we are. And
for sure.
I'm sure the audience is going to get a lot out of your words of wisdom. So
yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So until the next time, thanks for joining the Generations of Wealth, and go out there and live your vision, love your life.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of Generations of Wealth. May your newfound knowledge help you in leveling up your own strategies to get through the many obstacles to your money-making processes and bring you much closer to the financially secure life you truly deserve. Continue filling up your accounts and further polish your financial tactics by listening to more episodes of the podcast at thegenerationsofwealth.com. Because in your wealth building journey, there is no other way to go but up, giving you the chance to finally live your vision, love your life. That's all for now. See you on the next one.